Hi, everybody. I'm Scott. I'm the lead organizer for 5051 in the state of Indiana. With me is Brian Jonasen. Say hi, Brian.
Hello, I'm Brian.
Okay, so Brian is in charge of our veterans for Indiana 5051. Now, everybody knows that we've been talking about a counter town hall. We've talked about going to for the Victoria Spartz thing on this Friday. What people may not realize is that Vicky Spartz has moved that event from the Westfield City Council building to a private facility at the IMMI thing. I don't know what it is, I've never been there. Our concern is she went from having a public forum, which is the nature of democracy, to a private facility where presumably she's going to control the security arrangements. Now, Brian is an Air Force veteran, and despite having spent a career doing the, at least aspects of the violent side of the world, he's now been heading up nonviolent stuff for us, which is the amazing paradox and irony that is 2025. And I wanted Brian to talk to us about what it means, first of all, what the bystander effect is, and how we handle if Victoria Spartz wants one of our people out. So, Brian.
All right, so something to think about, and we're probably going to do some formal de-escalation training in the future, but to kind of get us set with regards to the town hall and that environment that we will find ourselves in, one thing that we need to take into consideration up front is that we are going to participate in this event from an intelligence gathering perspective, okay? So don't think of us as disruptors in this regard. That will come later. Right now, we are gathering information and intelligence to see how this particular town hall is going to be run versus the way that we've seen other town halls run in some of the viral clips that we've seen from the pushback at the town halls. We're not saying that we're not going to be allowed to push back. We just don't want to stand up as an individual element and arm of 5051 and identify ourselves as such. We want to blend into the crowd. So with regards to this town hall specifically and the fact that it's moved to a private venue, one of the things that we just got from an intelligence gathering town hall with the Hamilton County Republicans town hall was that they had security en masse. They had about 20 security individuals. 6 of them were uniformed police officers, and the remainder of them were wearing black security. They looked like they were hired. So that's the first thing that we want to make sure that we do when we show up at an event like this is acknowledge the fact that there will be security and to take mental notes. The first thing that you ought to do when you're entering the facility is know where all the exits are at. The second thing you ought to do is kind of take a look around and see how much security is present. Additionally, take a note to see if they're armed. They may have tasers, they may have tear gas, or not tear gas, they may have pepper spray, they may actually have guns if they're sheriff's deputies or if they're the local police. That should not intimidate you. That is actually meant to intimidate folks from causing good trouble. So those are things that you want to do. Now, take note of that, but don't stare, right? The security is going to be looking at the crowd, and they're going to be looking to try to identify folks that may look like they're coming to cause good trouble or not so good trouble in other people's case. We don't want to be labeled that way at this event. Blend in, right? So that's why we're not all going to wear matching t-shirts at this event. That's why we're not going to have any identifying marks. That's, we'll come up with the secret handshake and the wink and the nod in the future when we all get to know each other better. But this is really about protecting ourselves and helping us do some future planning based on what we find from this town hall.
Okay. So Brian, can you talk about what the bystander effect is?
Yeah, so the bystander effect you have probably seen on several viral videos. The one that's probably most prevalent that folks have seen is a woman in Boise, Idaho had been protesting, yelling back at the speaker. And it so happened that she already had a target because she had previously run for office. So people knew who she was and they were expecting the behavior. If you saw the video, her behavior was not bad, but the response, using folks that actually weren't even correctly identified as security, in conjunction with the local sheriff's deputy, manhandled her out, right? So the bystander effect is nobody stood up to defend her honor. And I'm not saying, standing up to defend that way. I'm saying to stand up and shout that down, that is incorrect, that should not be happening. And that if she had to leave, she needs to be able to leave on her own accord, and not be dragged out in the fashion that she was. So the bystander effect was nobody thinking to do anything beyond recording. That's a problem with our society right now. You see it time and time again. People are very quick to pull out their phones, which is good. It's good that we capture things that are that are wrong, but we don't need everybody to capture things that are wrong. We need folks to help de-escalate situations. We need folks to help intervene nonviolently, and that is what we all need to be thinking about when we attend these events.
Okay, so Brian, I'm going to paint a scenario with you, and I'm going to ask for your recommendation as to how we handle it. So one of our people goes up and asks a question. Spartz gives a crappy answer or an insulting answer. We're all on edge. One of us is going to pop off, and then security is going to move in on them. What do we do?
So if that occurs, and so we'll take one quick step back too. What we're saying is it's okay to boo. It's okay to applaud a really great question that you happen to agree with, right? So we're not saying that we are there to sit on our hands and say nothing. We need to peacefully disagree. And we'll talk a little bit about this. Remind me to talk about this with regards to the way that this particular individual tends to ramble when she answers a question. So we'll get to that one. But in this particular instance, if one of us has popped off and you're out of there, I say that what we need to do is we need to make sure that we at least have one person that is affiliated with 5051, that is, I am going to be the documentarian, right? So I am going to be the one person with a cell phone, because there will be plenty of other folks with cell phones, but we need one of us to have a cell phone. Okay. Just one.
Bill, if you're watching this, you're a legal observer. Please, you be that person. Continue.
All right, so document, right? The second thing that we do is we distract. And the way that we distract is by standing up in support of that individual. Now, let me say that it may not be someone from 5051 that pops off.
Sure.
Anybody in the audience, not just the 5051ers, they are us, right? We are there to support them. And that's the way that we feel that the 5051 movement is an amplifying voice for all Americans and all issues that we're having right now with the current administration. So it's really important that we stand up for anybody that is in this situation. And if we're thinking about this ahead of time, forewarned is forearmed, right? You're kind of loaded to react if you've thought about this. So the first thing that you can do is stand up, and I call it the I'm Spartacus moment. Those that have seen the movie Spartacus knows what I'm talking about. But it's basically standing up, and you saw it with another video, and this was a veteran. If those that saw the video, a veteran, he had a cast on his arm, so that might be a visual cue for you to remember that on YouTube. But he was very animated and very upset, and he said they're eroding veterans' rights, right? Those are the kind of folks that we want on our veterans group, and we want in our Indiana 5051 as well. Somebody else stood up and said, he is a veteran, let him speak, right? So it's not just about veterans, it just happens to be that that's what it was at the time. So she has a point, let her speak, right? So it's that kind, that's the Spartacus moment that we're talking about, right? And it is probably still going to escalate to the point where security is going to want to engage and physically remove the individual. If that individual is you, you can control how that is done. And my recommendation is that you use non-physical confrontational hand gestures, right? So if you put your hands up to give yourself a little bit of physical space, and also it's not a surrender, right? You're not putting your hands all the way up. You're just putting your hands in front of you. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't see both my hands. You're putting both of your hands up as kind of a blocking gesture, saying, hey, stay out of my space. And it also is not a physical confrontation. You never want to do this and that, even though that might be your reaction, right? It's like, come at me. No, this is stay off of me. I will remove myself on my own accord. And if you can kind of think about how you would react ahead of time, you'll know how to react when this occurs. So that's the second part of it. Then the rest of us, of course, all stand up, and basically you can mimic the same thing, or you just stand up and you can boo, you can say, let her talk, you can do whatever it is that you feel you need to do, and this is something that we'll hone over time. But the important thing is that we don't just stand by and watch it happen without making some kind of an action. And if we're dispersed all over the crowd and we're all kind of standing up at the same time when we see that kind of thing happen, whether it's us or someone else in the audience, then they know that someone's got their back. And if they are marshaled out, Scott, I think that that's the point where we all follow that individual out.
Absolutely. Now, one other thing, Brian, can you hold up your whistle?
Yes.
So these are tiny security whistles that I just found and printed up. I will have them for everyone. So if we need to make a noise, this is all plastic and we'll get through security. Okay?
They fit on a keychain. You can put them on a lanyard, and they could be a zipper pull, right? So you could have them somewhat close. Of course, if it's a zipper pull, it might have trouble getting to it. But it's small and it's concealable.
And loud.
Yes.
Okay.
And if we're all blowing the whistles at the same time, that'll amplify it.
Yep. Okay. The debating technique that Spartz uses, where she goes on and on. Talk about that.
Yeah. So GIF gallop.
So the term for this is what's called the Gish Gallop, Gish, and it's a debating technique that was developed by the religious right to promote creationism, of course. And if you remember the first and the only Biden-Trump debate of this of the 2024 election cycle, remember when Trump just came out with and Biden looked, huh? And everyone on the right said, well, Biden's incompetent, he's old, he's slow. No, it's a way that you simply overwhelm your opponent verbally. The way that just, it's like knocking them to the ground. So talk about Spartz and that.
Right. So, first thing that we acknowledge is that we are angry, right? I mean, we're doing this because we are very angry, but we need to keep our anger at bay. Anger can lead to physical confrontation. We don't want that. And so, you might angrily start yelling at the speaker. We have to be respectful, right? The disrupting will happen later when we kind of get a feel for how to best disrupt a situation. In this situation where the individual is going to continue to talk and basically eat up the clock, which is what they do in Congress when they're talking, right? They sometimes cede their time, but usually they take every second that they have and then they go beyond it. So what we can do is you just start to boo. And it also helps that you can hold your watch up and point to it. In other words, you're saying time. Everybody understands time. It's time for you to stop talking. So that is a technique that I think can work in this situation. She may choose to ignore us, but if you get the whole audience holding up their watch saying, it's time, shut up, lady, then we ought to be able to get her to go on to the next question. Her intent is to answer as few questions as possible and limit her exposure to answering the tough questions.
Okay. Brian, I've heard you use the term brigading before. Can you talk about that?
So brigading is a concept of locking arms together, and there's a couple of different ways.
So that's like this, right?
Yeah. So if we are together as a wall, like say somebody, and this will come later too when we're talking about open space rallies that like we have at the State House. If you find that there's a violent confrontation, locking arms and getting in between the confronter and the person that they're confronting, we create a fence basically, and we create a safe space for them. So that's a great technique. We'll talk a little bit in the future. Even if we were all sitting together in the same row, and let's say that someone in the middle has been so disruptive that they're going to come and get them, well, that's when the whole row stands up. We all link arms, and you can't get a body of people out of a row that way unless you start yanking them like a zipper, one at a time, right? Yep. That slows things down. That's not what we want to do at this event, but that is a technique that we can use in future events, and that's certainly a technique that we can use in outdoor events. I'll give you an example of a version of that I saw actually used at a rally in front of Congresswoman Spartz's office in support of Ukraine. We had a Russian gentleman come up and start speaking in Russian very loudly, trying to disrupt the crowd. The Ukrainians that were there, they knew who he was, right? They knew him by name. He was an older gentleman, and one of the older Ukrainian gentlemen that knew him started to put his hands on him and push him, right? Never want to have that happen at our rally. It's nonviolent. This touching someone else is a violent action, especially if you don't have their permission to do so. So how do you deal with that? Instead of pushing and shoving, because what happens, and this happened at Sturgis. Okay. There was a veterans rally outside of a veterans hall where a congressman was recognizing the fact that the United States did not do a very good job protecting veterans that came home from Vietnam. And so it was a platitude kind of thing that he was doing. Well, he had 51 protesters that were outside that event, and an altercation happened, and a 76-year-old man was pushed by another man and pushed and fell down, and I think he was hurt. He might have hit his head, and that can happen. I know someone that it happened to who was in his 80s, and it was on a golf course, and there was an altercation. So be very careful about putting hands on someone, even if it's just to push them away. That's why I say the hands up approach at least creates that space and says, I'm not going to touch you, but don't you dare touch me either. Mm-hmm. The other part of that de-escalation that happened is we had a couple of our bigger gentlemen get in between those two and create that wall, that brigading wall. And then the crowd chanted as loud as possible to basically drown out the one guy, because he came by himself, that was heckling the crowd. And he finally gave up and left. And so we de-escalated it from becoming a violent confrontation. We put folks in front. We didn't use crossed arms. Crossed arms kind of indicates that you're being aggressive, being extremely defensive. You create kind of a passive position, but a passive position that's ready for action if need be.
Okay. So I'm going to just summarize this a bit and close out. So we're going into what is potentially or almost certainly a hostile environment with the Victoria Spartz thing. 5051 is a nonviolent protest movement, and we mean that profoundly. Okay, so we've got to do this correctly. We want to try and control our tempers as much as she makes us crazy. Okay, and when or if, and hopefully it's an if, one of our people or any of the people that are there is treated poorly by security, we want to be supportive. We want to avoid the bystander effect. We want our designated legal observer to film it, and we want to do whatever we can to maintain people's rights and get them out peacefully. We do not want to see what happened in Iowa or Idaho happen in Indiana. Brian, did I miss anything?
You didn't. Let me one closing thought, and nonviolence is our moral clarity. We do not want to give that away, right? So as soon as we give away our moral clarity, that we are a nonviolent movement, it changes everything for us. And so we absolutely, so what I say is come armed with knowledge, come armed with the truth. if you're going to ask questions, do heavy research and really know the background of the question that you're asking. Ask it with clarity, ask it without anger, but you can be as pointed as possible when you ask those questions.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We will see you on Friday night. Bye.